Oh, there we go. You're the host, Lisa. That's why. Okay. All right. So before we jump into Mr. Berkowitz, we're going to share some info about our acquisition COI leadership team and an upcoming event later this month that might be of interest to our participants today. Our leadership team is chaired by our government chair, Jaime Gracia, from the Internal Revenue Service, vice chaired by Florence Castle from the U.S. Digital Service. Our industry chair is Julie Dixon from Booz Allen Hamilton. Kevin Ewell-Page is our industry vice chair from Deloitte. I am Nicole Santero, the communications chair from Booz Allen Hamilton. Lisa Zellers is our programs chair from Red Horse Corporation. And Kayla Reed is our logistics lead from Deloitte. Later this month, we have another upcoming event from Vera Ashworth, the Government IT Category Manager and Deputy Assistant Commissioner for GSA's Office of Information Technology category, and John Radziewski, Director of the new IT Vendor Management Office. So they'll be talking about the objectives of the IT VMO and how far it's come over the last year or so. So if you're interested in that, we'll send out the slides for this presentation after the event, and you can register for that event at the embedded link. Two other reminders. We do have a recent white paper out titled Emerging Technologies and Acquisition, How Blockchain, RPA, Data Analytics, and AI are Enabling Federal Procurement Transformation. Again, when the slides are sent, you can take a look at that white paper. And we also have a LinkedIn page where we post white papers, events coming up. You can stay connected with the community at that link. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Lisa to introduce Mr. Berkowitz.
Successfully unmuted. Thank you, Nicole. Mr. Berkowitz joined the Department of Commerce, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Secretary for Administration team in January 2011, and is responsible for portfolio management, technical and programmatic evaluation, functional acquisition oversight, enterprise risk, and strategic sourcing initiatives across the entire department. He has over 40 years experience in acquisitions, engineering, management, and major systems development, and previously held positions across the Department of Energy, Air Force, and Office of Secretary of Defense in key budget and cost analysis positions. We're in for a treat today, I think. Barry and I have had a couple conversations leading up to this, and he's gonna talk to us about the strategies and tactics used in implementing the OFPP frictionless acquisition task of the CAP Goal 11, specifically how to reduce high-risk contract types, but continue to implement hybrid contracting approaches. And we're also going to discuss Commerce's progress to fulfill important capabilities required for the PMIAA. And Barry, thank you so much again for joining us. And for everyone on the phone, I'm not sure, Nicole, if I should make him a presenter or if everyone can also click on the ellipses by Mr. Berkowitz's and make him and move him to the stage if you want to only see his video feed. Is that the best way to do it?
Yes, if we want to have Mr. Berkowitz front and center, we can stop sharing the slides and then go ahead and make him, pin him to the screen.
Let's see if we can do that. So I made him the presenter, but he's not big anymore.
Well, maybe I have to speak. No, I didn't feel a pin prick, so I don't know if I got the pin prick.
I see you and Mr. Berkowitz.
Yeah, I just did that. So I think it might be okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I can get started, and you don't have to see me. I'm in the, I'm waving, so you know which block to look at if you need to see. But in any event, I know that Kevin Ewell Page is the guy that you can blame for having me here in this presentation. So if it's bad or I'm boring or my jokes are really bad, let me just tell you that my jokes are always really bad. So let me rephrase that. So if you don't like the jokes, which are always really bad, they make dad jokes look good, it's Kevin's fault. So we'll all blame Kevin. But in any event, I was involved, just as a background, with CAP Goal 11, which was originally initiated when the CAP goals were first initiated 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, almost 5. It was really to implement the PMIAA Act. That was the real intent of CAP Goal 11 for the first 2 years. After that, the name was changed to frictionless acquisition, which still included the implementation of CAP Goal 11 PMIAA actions. But it was really then, well, once you do that, how can we really reduce the time from the statement of I have a need to the time I have the product or service? So reducing that time to get the acquisition completed or for that program completed. So that's what the frictionless acquisition concept in the big term is. And it looked at many different aspects. Soraya from DHS, my counterpart, started something called the Procurement Innovation Labs. They're known as the PIL. In this case, it's an easy pill to swallow. It's actually a really great concept. And as a matter of fact, working with her, we had 3 of the PIL presentations, workshops actually at Commerce. I kicked each one of them off, and we had about 75 attendees at each one. And one of the things that I noticed was that 50% of the audience were not contracting officers, even though PIL stands for Procurement Innovation Laboratory, and it really is looking at procurement activities, innovation activities to enhance, procurement actions, reducing that time from the need to the receipt, and reducing the friction overall in getting a procurement out the door. But 50% of the participants, at least at Commerce anyway, were not contracting officers. The biggest percentage, other than contracting officers, were program managers. Program managers, cores, procurement lawyers, finance folks. But the point was, it was really more of what I call the big A, all the functional areas associated with procurement. And the other aspect that I noticed was that it kind of supported the view that I've had for many years that in the old days, and I think I can say that now, God, I sound like my father, but the point was that last century, mid-last century even, when we trained program managers and contracting officers, we went to the same school. So there was a school that the Air Force used to have that they called it the SPO school, the System Program Office School. And after the 12 weeks, if you went through one door, you were a program manager, you went through the other, and you became a contracting officer. So for 12 weeks, we were in the same training program, learning everything from contracting. 4 weeks to the 12 was really on contracting. And the rest of the time, we're learning about program management. And having that connection early on in your education created the big A concept right from the start. And so what the PIL illustrated to me was the need for that kind of connection again. So we didn't have that connection anymore. The programs were kind of separated, and contracting officers learned about contracting, didn't learn program management. Program managers went to the program management schools and really didn't learn about contracting. And I think that's a big, big flaw. We also had to change from the COTR to just the COR. And in many cases, the CORs aren't even considered subject matter experts anymore in that program. They're just contract administrators. And we lose a significant amount of, again, that technical and the big A connection up front. So one of the things that I saw from this, and that we're taking as a lesson learned, was we're creating a PIL at Commerce, except we're going to change the name. I'm not quite sure what we're going to call it yet, but it's really designed to look at the innovation aspects in procurement and program management and in the big A. It's to bring those two communities together along with the procurement lawyers and the financial folks. And when you think about innovation, what another aspect of it is that innovation is not something new. The innovation in this case is really using the tools and techniques that have always been available to us, but that we haven't been using per se. It's almost like the old fly before you buy approach. That was a technique that is allowed in the FAR, but it's not used very often. So what the Innovation Lab tries to do is show examples through case studies of using some of these techniques that are not commonly used, either because we get used to doing something a certain way and you don't therefore try a different technique, or they might be considered risky and people are afraid to take the risk. So it's really not new. It's really applying things that we know work through and using it through examples and case histories. So that's kind of one of the lessons learned coming out of the CAP Goal 11 is the innovation requirement, which is really applying a lot of the tools that we have in the toolbox, not applying the hammer to every problem. Not every problem is a nail, and we apply that hammer no matter what it is. So the Innovation Lab gets you to experience other tools in that toolbox and give you the opportunity to try it without fear of retribution because of the risk, if there's even if it's only a perceived risk. So that's one aspect, or of the lessons learned, if you will, and is bringing that big A concept back together early on and to the left of the life cycle to do a better job of creating the most efficient acquisition strategy, as well as coming up and validating the requirements and really validating the requirements. It kind of tests those. It really challenges the requirements generator to make sure that we get the actual requirement defined and validated, so we don't go out and procure the wrong item to meet the wrong intent. So that's all part of the lessons learned and element of that frictionless piece of the acquisition. The other piece that has come along, by the way, if anybody has any questions while I'm going along, please ask them, because otherwise I'm going to just ramble on here and I might end up in Abilene and I'm starting in Arlington, Virginia. So
That's a good Texas joke, Barry. I get it. We will ask everybody to put your questions in the chat. So if they come along and they're the same, we can consolidate them or get them. But as they go, I'll let you know if we have any.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So one of the other aspects, and this comes about in trying to come up with efficiencies. Part of the frictionless acquisition piece is efficiency and effectiveness. And one of the things that we have found that I've been working on since I got to Commerce was the high reliance on high-risk contracts. We were using high-risk contracts almost very exclusively in many cases, and when there was no need for that, and it put all the risk on the department, and it kind of it doesn't instill the desire or the want, if you will, for innovation from industry. So everybody gets very used to the same. Well, it's almost like just time material. You know, we'll just keep throwing stuff at it, and we get paid for it, and the job ultimately gets done. But we weren't really instilling the desire or the need for innovation or the desire or need for really efficiency. So when I got to DOC, we were around 46% high risk contracts, and through the process that we developed at Commerce, our Milestone review process, which is really implementing good program management throughout the life cycle of a program, and having these Milestone review boards where our deputy secretary acts as the Milestone decision authority. We were only doing that for the high risk, high profile programs, the mission critical programs. So it wasn't all the programs in the department, but it was those that were considered, mission critical. But as we were going through those reviews, I was challenging everyone based on the contract type. Especially, give an example, if it was a satellite control station, where they've been doing the O&M operations on a time and material process for the last 15 years. And they're coming up with, a new contract to continue doing this. I would say, take a look at the data. Normally what happens is you have a fixed set of numbers of bodies that are always there at the control center. And is that not a fixed price environment? And by taking a look at the data and requiring that as an approval process, is make sure they are capturing the data. And then as each option was coming up, we would review the data and identify from the data where those fixed price elements exist, so that we could modify the contract and take many of the tasks out of time, material, or cost plus and put them into a fixed price environment. By doing that, it actually provides an environment for innovation, for initiative, and for efficiency, because the industry looks for ways to improve on this, especially if you give a share back in a form of any, profit sharing, I guess is the best way to consider it in the private industry. But it does provide an environment for efficiency improvement and innovation. And since then, we're down to around 17% of high-risk contracts. So it's been working, but it was all done through an ad hoc process of these major reviews. This year, we just started taking that to the base programs all the way down to the lowest levels by building a set of briefings that we call Big A in operations, and briefing the bureaus and the programs on bringing in the Big A concept up front, and working together as a team early on, not only, like I said, to help with the requirements development and validation, but also with developing a good acquisition strategy. So by the time you get to the need for a contract, you can now just execute that strategy in the form of an acquisition plan in details. So we're trying to take that, like I said, to the base. Another example that would fit very well with ACT-IAC membership is from an Agile development phase or Agile development process. We're working with one particular program right now where the whole thing was going to be cost plus. And I proposed an approach where take the initial concept formulation, if you will, or definition, you can keep that cost plus or time material. But as you develop it going into your sprints, the sprints are kind of designed to be fixed price. When you think about it, you have a fixed group of developers, you've got a regular set schedule for the sprints. So you could set those up very easily as fixed price and reduce a lot of the risk going in further on into the program and increase the environment for innovation. The other piece, like I mentioned already, was instilling the Big A concept, which brings up front and early the creation of the Big A team for all your efforts, whether it's major or a minor program effort. All function areas working together with the PM at the early stages of the program to develop, like I said, the requirements, the acquisition strategy, best solution to mission need. So that's another one of these lessons learned, is that the Big A concept really works, and it's kind of a very critical element in, again, frictionless acquisition, reducing the time from I need to the time I have, as far as getting the product or service.
We have a couple questions coming in. Do you want one?
Sure.
So I think Kevin, Kevin, your ears must be burning, because earlier today we did say that you were the connection that brought Barry to us. He's asking, probably is a good starter question. Thank you, Kevin. How do you define program at Commerce? Is it a program definition or contract threshold concept, specifically for milestone reviews?
So for milestone reviews, and Kevin has some inside ball here. He has some inside knowledge. He might have forgotten it by now. He's getting older, so I can tell you, as you get older, you forget things. When we started this concept at Commerce, and that was 10 years ago, this is the longest I ever held a job. I'm not quite sure why, but we first kept it kind of narrowly defined to just major programs. I'm of the belief that you can projectize anything. So even if it's a level of effort program, that could fit within the program definition. But if you want the classic definition that we're using for the classic program is something that has a start and an end with some kind of a deliverable. So that's the classic program definition. What we have taken starting this year was actually last year, moving that to even the level of effort programs, because you can projectize that as well. Even if it's, give me an example, at the Department of Commerce, we're a data agency. So we are submitting constantly different reports based on data that is either captured, most of it through the economic surveys that census provides, but the economic indicators, all of these, the American life, I forgot what the actual name of the American something survey, but those survey processes which go on a constant basis, even though it's a level of effort that's constantly going on, there are deliverables and you can actually projectize that. But generally speaking, we use the program definition of a start with an end, a definitive end, and some kind of a deliverable as a product or a service. So hopefully that answers your question, Kevin.
It was a great answer, but I think I asked the poorly configured question. You were talking earlier, you had the secretary involved in some milestone reviews for some of your most important programs. And I was trying to understand if that was truly a programmatic discussion where I mean, census is too big a program, it's a bureau, but some kind of major, I don't know, our trade program of some kind. Were you literally looking at the trade program and then the contracts underneath, or was this more like the milestone review of a major renewal of the trade program support contract?
So it's more like the latter.
Okay.
So we could have a milestone review. It has no contract implications whatsoever at that time.
Yeah.
We designed, if you will, and I didn't design this from scratch. I just took what was out there already. I didn't redesign anything. It was just, I'll call it, customizing it to fit the commerce way. But we have 4 major milestones for a program. The first milestone and the last milestone we delegate down to the bureaus. And then the milestones in the middle, actually 2 and 3, are the ones that come up to the blue carpet area for the approval. So what we looked at is we defined our mission critical programs by virtue of dollar size and total of the program. So that's inclusive of all contracts. So census, actually, the decennial census was one of the milestone review programs. The JPSS satellite program was another milestone review process. Or the new high altitude aircraft, hurricane hunting aircraft, that was a milestone review process. So a lot of the programs that we had were based on not only dollar value, mission criticality, and also one of the areas could be based on our enterprise risk profile, could be reputational risk. So it may not meet a dollar threshold, but because it has reputational risk associated with it, we would elevate that to a milestone review process.
Thank you, Barry.
Oh, you're welcome. And I did, Kevin, you may not have been on, but I blamed you for me being here. So if you get any bad comments about my presentation, it's all your fault. Okay. Were there any other questions I can hit right now, or should I just continue going on?
Please continue. Thank you.
Okay. I can start my rambling again. All right. So one of the other aspects associated with the frictionless acquisition, or the CAP Goal 11, was the continuing implementation of the Program Management Improvement and Accountability Act, better known as PMIAA. And this is a soapbox I've been on for a long time, since I've been going to the Chief Acquisition Officer Council meetings at OMB. I've been arguing for the fact that we in the civilian agencies do not take care of our program managers. And we need to be putting more emphasis on the program management career field. And a couple of the areas that I thought we needed to really concentrate on is, one, providing care and feeding for program managers and civilian agencies by coming up with a career identifier, one where we can find our program managers easily. You can't find them anywhere in any data sources we have. Even if you look at what was at that time the Federal Acquisition Institute's FATAS program, which has been overcome now with CSOD, but the point, and it hasn't been implemented yet. I guess it's the 14th, 7 days away. In another week, it'll be actually operational. But the point is that every time you pull data out of that, it was already spoiled. It wasn't current, and it didn't have enough data in the system to be able to really understand the nuances of your program managers. So one of the things that we've been harping on, and was part of the law, and OPM has been a little slow in getting to this piece of it, is being able to identify our program managers, identify their competencies, understand what certifications they have, because there's many different certifications available and that are out there. And also then, once we have that, be able to not only match those program managers and their talents to the programs of need to get a better opportunity for a successful program. Again, another way to do frictionless acquisition. If you have an appropriately qualified program manager leading the effort, you have a higher probability of success, because they're going to be employing all the tools and techniques of good program management, which includes good contracting activities, to get to a better outcome. So one of the things, since we weren't getting what we needed yet, in Commerce, we actually ended up building a little system. It was just released, and it was built using an off-the-shelf, commercially available system. So we're not building a legacy capability here. As a matter of fact, so far I've been briefing this system. We briefed it to the Program Management Improvement Council. It's the PMPC, Program Management Policy Council. There we go, at OMB. We briefed it there. We briefed it at our Big A conference, and we briefed it around at a couple of different agencies because of the PMPC involvement. And we're offering that code to anybody who wants it, because it works no matter where you are. So with it, we've been able to identify our program managers. We've been able to define and keep current the data. And I'll tell you how we're kind of controlling that in a minute. We can define the competency of each of our program managers, and it's the nuanced aspects of their competencies, because there are major, the life cycle of a program goes across many years. I mean, if you're doing a new aircraft or a new ship or a new satellite, it's not something that happens in a matter of 12 months. It could be 3, 10, 7 years, whatever, to get from start to finish. So it's a matter of where in the life cycle have these program managers built their competencies. Because if all their experience has been early on in the beginning of a program, you put them in the later stages of a program, they're kind of at a loss. Same thing if they built all their competencies in a lot later stages, and you move them to the beginning where they have to do all that requirements development and definition and validation, they're kind of at a loss. Or just doing an AOA, even if they've never really done an AOA, they've heard about it, they know what it looks like, but trying to implement one for the first time can be a little harrowing. So understanding their competencies, and also where in the life cycle they've had those competencies, what certifications they've had or have. Because one of the things we couldn't find out is how many people in the department had PMPs, program management professional certifications through the PMI, the Program Management Institute, because of their privacy rules. We could tell based on the FATAS, we could do some matching of names to FATAS and see if they had a FACT PPM and what level, but we couldn't tell if they had any of the PMI certifications, or did they have a graduate degree from one of the universities that offers graduate degrees in program management. So we also have an ability to capture their resume and ability for them to continually update their resume. again, all of this is so that we can match the talent to our programs. And this is not just by bureau. We can go across the department this way. Right now, we've got a need at headquarters for someone to do a new software upgrade program, and there's no program manager there. So we have gotten the list of the competencies that are required. We're using the system to identify a PM or PMs in other in other bureaus of the department, and offer them the opportunity to come in for a detail or an actual change for career growth and career development. And that's one of the reasons that's one of the aspects of our system that kind of generates currency. If an individual is really interested in their program, in their development as a program manager and growth, as well as promotions, they're going to want to keep this data current, because that's how we're going to find people to give them those opportunities. And that's also how they're going to be able to find opportunities that are available, because we're going to have this, or we have this on our COP, and there also will be all the opportunities that are open opportunities available across the department. So it's not in one bureau. So it's going to offer the opportunities to the PM community. It's also going to be able to match the talents, again, like I said, to the programs. That's a foot stomper to me. That's why I've said it 3 times already. I'll probably say it 3 more. But offer opportunities to the PM community across the department. It's also something that through our COP, because we have hooks and strings, or links from our COP to the I'll call it the civilian agency COP, so people can see opportunities across the borders, if you will. But again, strong career development ability and ability to create appropriate IPTs that we use in a department to support our milestone review boards, our commerce IT review boards, our acquisition review boards, and any special projects that come up for review, especially those that are coming up, to the headquarters. We build in my office these IPTs across the department. Well, now we'll have a basis to be able to, if you will, cherry pick appropriate expertise to provide these IPT support. Because right now, up to now, it's been all relying mostly on the expertise of the people I have in my shop, which is expert. They are experts, but we only have a couple of people. So it's kind of, we need the help from the bureaus across the department. So that's what this care and feeding with our system, and that's another piece of implementing PMIA, because that was one of the 3 pillars, was the workforce development pillar. So that's how we're actually handling it. So in summary, I just went through very quickly kind of the things that, or lessons learned, and what we're doing to implement some of these things, and how even some of it's being implemented across the rest of the civilian agencies. This specifically, the pill function is one that DHS has built, and we're building one, and I think Treasury is building one. There are other agencies that are actually now seeing the benefit to this, so that's starting to expand. So have we gotten very far yet? I can say honestly, like a lot of initiatives in government, you don't see significant inroads immediately. But I can honestly say that this has been a multi-pronged approach. And because of that, I'm seeing already payments and payoffs at Commerce. And I think other agencies are starting to see the benefits of this stuff. And because it's multi-pronged, it's not just, one major arrow or initiative going forward, that we're starting to see something that will actually be able to take root and won't just be a revolutionary change that will quickly die, but more of a revolutionary change. And with that, I am done rambling, and now I'm open for any form of a question.
Thank you so much, Barry. That was a lot of information. I think if people can come up with some Q&A and start loading up the chat, that typically works pretty well. In the meantime, I think you've hit us over the head a little bit with matching the right skills projects. So I think everyone here knows what that workforce skill matching is becoming more and more important as projects are more complex. So thank you for pointing that out and making some headway on that front.
And I did use the term agile throughout the process here, so I want to get credit for that one.
Oh, yeah.
So while we're waiting for questions from me, Kevin, I want to ask you, is there a life after government service?
Oh, sure. But you're always looking for that mission that hit again, you know?
Yes.
You can never escape it.
I got to tell you, after spending 13 years in private industry, after my military career, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's basically why I'm back in the government.
Hey, I have a question for you, Barry. I don't know if I'm sorry to jump in the queue if other people are following the rules and putting in the box. You mentioned earlier that you had a series of materials that you had developed for the department to help push the major program reviews down to lower and lower or smaller and smaller programs. And I'm curious, is any of that stuff public or shareable? Because I suspect it would be of great interest to other agencies.
I will tell you that right now, the way that was built, it should be no reason not to be shareable. And I'll be more than happy to run that through our public affairs group to get it definitely approved for sharing, because I have no problem sharing it. I think it's a good piece of work. It's short, but it very clearly shows the benefit of that big A concept. Matter of fact, there was one slide that I created, actually it was two, and it was just nothing more than a Venn diagram. One was disconnected three balls, if you will, and then the big A concept where the three balls intersect. So it's this little briefing takes that beyond that and gets a little bit more specific, but it's really powerful as far as being able to show the benefit of what we're trying to do here. So I'll take that action.
Thank you. I bet you didn't expect to get invited to talk and then get homework from your talk. So
that's exactly right. But knowing you, Kevin, it's not unheard of. I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you, Barry.
We also, by the way, we built our Milestone review board through something we call our scalable program management framework, which there's a manual for that as well. And that's been shared extensively throughout the civilian agencies. I don't see any reason why we can't share that if anybody's interested in that. But what's also good about that document is that it has a very large appendix of templates of all the artifacts that you need to get through a program, appropriate artifacts. And I tell everybody when they look at this, I'm not saying that you need to write a 50-page requirements document. It depends on what you're buying. It could be done with one paragraph or one sentence. So the point is, look at the table of contents of each of these templates and use that as a checklist. And as long as that program is thinking about those elements or have thought about it, however they document it, it's up to them. But at least thinking about those are going to give you a higher probability of success. So I'll look at making sure we can share that as well.
That would be really great. And I think we have a similar question that I was also going to ask from Charia McDowell. How did you collect the competencies or the areas of competencies for the PMs? Did you use the OPM tool, or is it in that handbook you just described?
Actually, we have more competencies that we capture than the OPM tool, the CEDAR tool. I forgot the numbers. Again, this is going back to Kevin and our ages. Can't remember squat. But the CEDAR tool, I think, captures maybe 20 some odd competencies, and we have like 50 something competencies. Again, I don't want to call it the difference, but what we did building this tool is we used a couple of graybeards. People that have a lot of experience in program management. So these competencies are ones that we know, being in a program management field, are things that are needed. So we laid it out into this tool, and the way it's operated is that the individuals can identify their competencies, the number of years they have in that competency, and the life cycle in a program that those competencies are appropriate for. That tool then forms the basis, as well as, if they load their resume in and all of the certifications, we have a way to easily track and cross-check so that if one of them is being considered for a program, we can validate all the competencies and capabilities. But it's beyond the CEDAR tool, the number of competencies that we're tracking. And that's the only thing that, in my view, if we gave this to another agency, that they might want to modify or customize, either, gray out one of the competencies if they don't think that's important, or there could be others that they might want to add, but otherwise it's probably more of a graying out. We think we've covered just about every potential competency that there could be.
Well, I think mission specific, you might have, very weather focused things or things that maybe wouldn't apply to another
Right.
agency. Vice versa. I'm trying to think, maybe you guys would need ISR or something DoD centric, right? So
Right.
that would make some sense. I
Yeah.
have
So
another question from Paul. Do you want to finish first?
no, that's okay.
So Paul Chandler asked, the DOC CIO recently made some remarks about trying to get commodity work out of the way so that the bureaus can focus on their mission. So from an acquisition perspective, have you thought about ways Commerce might be able to leverage whole of government solutions, either acquisition vehicles or shared services, so that the team can offload some of the simpler items and focus more time and attention on things that matter most for Commerce?
So absolutely, and we've done that. We're doing that. We've done that, and we're continuing to do it. I forgot how many years ago, but I think it was in 11, 12, early 12, late 11, when we started with our shared sourcing or strategic sourcing initiatives, which have generated a tremendous amount of fruit, not only in cost avoidance, but also in reducing the commodity workload from the desk of the contracting officers, so they could spend more time on the mission critical or mission essential efforts. We started out with the low-hanging fruit, things like PCs, cell phones and cell phone service. We have a lot of different software packages, like Adobe is now on our our shared service. Matter of fact, we're starting looking at our third iteration of that contract. Microsoft, so we have I'll get there. ServiceNow. As a matter of fact, that's the platform I used for our PM identifier. As a matter of fact, it's called IPM, Information for PMs or Information of PMs. So that's ServiceNow, and so we every year, well, every 2 years we do a major cost analysis as far as our spend analysis. And based on that, we make determinations on which are our next targets that we're going to go after for our strategic sourcing. So these strategic sourcing vehicles are then available for the bureaus to exercise using purchase cards, or just go directly to our enterprise services to purchase what they need through this strategic sourcing vehicles. It's all done through a portal now. It's very simple, very easy, and it reduces that commodity burden, if you will, dramatically. So yes, we are doing that. We have been doing that, and it's very, very effective. So I support the DOT.
Yeah, I know that both Commerce and some of the bureaus are making some really good headway in shared services and things like that.
Yes.
Is that another focus for not just acquisition or more commodity buys of software licenses, but there are other things that where we're looking at shared services across Commerce or even at the bureau levels, I believe, too?
Yes. Well, like, give an example at the bureau level. NOAA they have ProTech, professional and technical services, and it's in 4 tiers. One I don't know exactly, I can't remember the names of the tiers, but effectively one is sort of like the weather service, one is the watching the ocean stuff, and they have the satellite arena, and that does professional and technical services. And we made that I signed the policy saying that's required for anybody in the department. Now, at first you would say, well, who else does satellites? Well, it turns out that we have commercial space as a program, and it was being moved from NOAA, where it was sitting for a long time, to headquarters with a new kind of a bureau designation. So anything that they were going to do from a professional and technical services and satellites, they would be using those vehicles. But we look at many different areas. Like I said, it's through our spend analysis. So one of the things that we did, I'm actually modified our contract writing system to require using the UN product and service codes, because they are a lot more detailed. Where the standard, PSC codes, I think you had one code for ADP. So whether you were buying a laptop, whether you were buying a Surface or a mouse or a keypad or a supercomputer, it was the one code. It was a little hard to determine if there was any true spend value there that you could use for strategic sourcing. By using the UN codes, you can determine clearly if you're buying mice, peripherals, mice, keyboards, monitors, or if you're buying desktops, laptops, and so forth. And when we did the PC strategic sourcing effort, we actually worked with the bureaus and the CIOs and came up with only 3 configurations of desktops and 3 configurations of laptops, because we had to that point over 200 contracts for PCs, literally thousands of activities in purchasing, and everybody was buying everything under the sun, and no matter what the configuration, paying all different ranges of prices. So now we have those configurations standardized across the department, which we do a technology refresh every year. But the point still remains that there's really only 3 configurations of desktops and only 3 configurations of laptops. So it's reduced our O&M costs and attention to detail relative to that, and it's reduced our spend overall and still getting the required equipment that we need. So that's quite large and quite extensive across the department. Everybody needs a computer of some kind, and some people have more than one. So we do that. We did it. One of the first ones we did was the telephone lines. This is something I did in private industry as well. Most organizations, institutions, government offices, or whatever, have a lot more telephone lines than they know they have, and they're paying for those. And many times they haven't been used in years. So one of the things that you could do in private industry, the way I would pay for this is I would go in for free, find the lines, and share in the savings I gave the company. So if I ended up saving them $150,000, I got half of that. That was my fee, half of what savings I generated in that 1 year. And then after that, they could continue that on their own. But we did that in the department. And every year, we reassess all the lines in a department, whether they're cell phone lines or fixed lines. Of course, all of our fixed lines are still going. They're now voice over IP, but there's line costs associated with that. So yes, we get it across the board on the different products and services. We look for every opportunity that makes sense. Not everything makes sense. I'll give you an example of what doesn't make sense, and something I thought should make sense. I still think it should make sense, but I guess I'm the lowest common denominator, so that's why I think it makes sense. No one else does. But guard services. I mean, we have multiple facilities across the country. So you would think, okay, why can't we kind of standardize or come up with a strategic sourcing for guard services? And I learned this actually when I was at Energy. Energy had, I forgot how many, 30 some odd contracts with the same vendor to provide guard services. So I said, we got to go work on that. And first time I had that opportunity, we have our headquarters building on 14th Street, HCHP. We have a facility out in Gaithersburg, the NIST facility, and we have a facility up in Silver Spring, which is NOAA. Silver Springs, Maryland, Gaithersburg's Maryland, but Gaithersburg is not Silver Spring. Different precincts, different local area laws, and DC has another set of laws. So the rules and laws associated with certification of people carrying firearms and protecting your facility are different. Now, in this general area, you would say, okay, you could probably find a company that could do that because it's the same 3 states or 3 areas, but it's not that simple. And then we have facilities out in Denver that are part of NIST, which is out in Gaithersburg, completely different altogether. And a company that does it here probably wouldn't do it out in Denver. Of course, if you're trying to do this with a small business, it makes it even more difficult. And that's another one of the elements of our strategic sourcing activities. Every one of them is with small businesses. So if we can't get directly to a small business manufacturer, we'll go through OEMs or value-added resellers that and through our process working with the actual developer, if you will, or the vendor and the OEM or the VAR, we can make sure that the VAR is getting the best pricing. So we're not paying a premium on top of a premium, but we're still getting it to a small business. And so that has helped our small business numbers dramatically. And we've been getting A pluses. Well, for the last 10 years, we've been getting an A. And I would say last 5, it's been A pluses. So it's all part of that. I'm a firm believer in that. So I don't know if you noticed, but
A little passion coming through there.
a little.
We only have a couple minutes left. I'm getting a lot of requests for the recording. So what you're saying must be golden. Thank you very much. And once we, just for everyone, we'll work on getting permission to go ahead and release the recording. If not, we'll let everybody know right away. But thank you so much for this. It's been really interesting. And we got from, some of those standards that we initiated talking about all the way through doing things in shared services or in consolidated ways only when it makes sense. And I think a lot of times that may or may not get lost in the shuffle as we go through our acquisition life cycle. So thank you for reminding us of that and giving us some concrete examples like the guards or like the other examples you talked about today to kind of put it in perspective as to something that we might actually do in our day-to-day. It makes it a lot more relatable. With that, I don't think we have any more questions queued up, but I just want to say thank you again. And we'll distribute at least these upfront slides to everybody and we'll follow up with the recording if possible. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Bye now.